is that a reason that not passing judgment? Because one of the things we haven't really talked about this evening, you mentioned a little bit, but you don't really discuss in this book the politics of Tibet, which is a country in the newspapers, in a sense, defined only by its politics. Is that connected to that? Because to discuss politics always seems to me to be passing a kind of judgment from above rather than being...
Yes, my instinct is not to lay Western values on cultures by saying what they should be or judging their politics, which we inevitably do from a Western standpoint. I think I've always been a bit more interested in how politics affect individuals within a country, how their own politics affect them, rather than to write from a sort of distance of height.
Yes.
So that's how politics struck me.
I think we have time for a couple more. This lady on the end here, or yes, either one. There we go.
You say you research a country before you go. I mean, how do you go about this? Do you talk to people or read? How do you go about it?
It's usually reading. People always imagine that I'm on a camel somewhere out in Uzbekistan, but I'm usually in the School of Oriental Studies researching. It's just book research, starting with the obvious books, and then usually during the course of research I find, in fact always, that certain things interest me especially, and then you research rather more deeply into those. Then there comes the time, of course, when you feel that you're taking in too much of the judgments or feelings or opinions of others, and it's something that you can feel too much swamped by. Then you go with too many preconceived notions. Then it's time to stop and to travel.
We have two in here.
Okay, yes, let's
take a couple pairs.
Okay, we have one right beside you there.
You said earlier about what a desolate place it is, and that I got the sense that you were surprised, or that the Tibetans might be surprised you were there. Did you get any sense of how the people you met viewed your journey?
The question was to what extent I got a sense that of how people viewed my journey. I'm ashamed to say that I didn't get very much sense of how they viewed me. Walking, as I was mainly doing, is a great luxury to people so poor. You walk, you expend energy only for your living. And so I was completely peculiar in as much as I was one of these trekkers. And I think they just regard us as a rather strange sort of tribe that are doing something which they would never do and coming from a world that they naturally find very hard to imagine. And I found them delightfully friendly, Tibetans, to me, as much as we could understand one another, which was not often. As Erica said, I did once or twice attempt Mandarin, my rather rusty Mandarin, and of course, not only would it not be very welcome, but most of them didn't speak it anyway. And I did find it that quite hard to gauge.
You mentioned about Kailash, and Kailash is a valley as well as a very rich culture in the absolute northern tip of Pakistan. Is there a link between the two?
I'm so sorry, I didn't quite get the question. Is there a link between...
Kailash is a valley as well as a tribe with very rich traditions and colorful culture in the absolutely extreme northern tip of Pakistan. So is it two links with...
Yes, is there a link between the people Kailash and the mountain? I don't think so. I've been asked before, and as far as I know, not. That's all I can say.
Being a notoriously bad packer when I go away, how do you pack?
Any tips? Yes, please.
What do you pack?
I don't think I'll be very much help to you. I lay out everything that I think I'm going to need before a journey, and I ask myself very seriously whether I really need that thing. And the answer is almost always no. And so my packing does shrivel down to quite a small backpack. Obviously, in a country of quite extremes, I mean, Tibet can be quite hot when the sun's out, and the moment it goes behind a cloud, you're getting frozen. They say it's the only country in the world where you can get sunstroke and frostbite at once. And I had layers that I, obviously would dress in layers without anything too heavy, but with the possibility of putting on extra. There's nothing that I infallibly take with me except these notebooks and language manuals. Usually they're not for Tibet, and a compass. I've got a very strong sense of direction, but it's always almost wrong. And so this travel writer has to take a compass.
As Buddhists consider Mount Kailash as very spiritual, but they don't believe in God. What is the thing that they consider Mount Kailash to be spiritual for?
The question was, since I describe Buddhism as a religion that doesn't believe specifically in a God, what do people Buddhist pilgrims circling around Mount Kailash believe in? It's complicated because what we might call the Buddhism that we know best in the West is of a rather elevated kind and a philosophical kind. People walking around Kailash, Buddhists and Hindus too, may believe in a multiplicity of gods. The mountain is a god, everything's a god. But they're not, I think, gods in the sense that we in you might call Abrahamic religions think of them. They are transient, like everything in Buddhism. Even the god of death, they say, dwells on Mount Kailash, but he too will pass away. So these gods are sort of godlings or demigods. It's a very different perception. And in circling Mount Kailash, their belief is in the benefits that it will accrue to them in terms of karma, that it will increase their chances of a better incarnation by the business of walking around. The Buddhists believe the mountain is guarded by Demchok, who's a sort of guardian god. But again, he too is transient and will one day disappear. Think of something. I think actually the books of Charles Allen are probably the best, who's written two, and they give very good history of Kailash and of the exploration around that area. Yes, the Search for Shangri-La and a previous just called A Mountain in Tibet. I almost took his title. And this is published in 1989. I think it's out of print, but I'm sure you can get it from A-Books. And it's a very good history particularly history of the exploration of that area, because all four of the great rivers of the Indian subcontinent rise near Mount Kailash. And he gives an account of the exploration of that area, the finding of their sources and so on. The Brahmaputra, the northernmost source of the Ganges, the Indus, the Sutlej, they all extraordinarily arise within 70 miles of the summit of Kailash. And Charles Allen's book, A Mountain in Tibet, describes the search, mostly in the 19th century, for those rivers and for the mountain itself. And those are nicely written books and quite erudite.